Raising money is actually not that hard. It's all down to the product knowledge, the knowledge of your service, and the information that you know how to take on that funding and give it back securely, right? Knowing that the risks involved are minimal, because with any kind of risk that you do that you're going to borrow the money for, I'm sure there's going to be a risk to it, but they need to be secured in their lending. So from when you know that whole circle, then it becomes a lot more easier than anything else, really. Like me, when it comes to plants, that's one product I cannot guarantee. I love flowers, but no matter how many plants I buy, they just seem to die. Like, look at these guys. I've had this for a while, and now look, they are dying on me. And I tell you one thing, I would not borrow funding to buy plants because I can't guarantee I'll give them back alive. Raising finance is not a special skill. It is purely about the product, information, and the knowledge of how you are going to take on that money and give it back within an agreed time period. Now, when I first got started in rent to rent, I used my own money. I never had much, so we quickly outgrew that and had to raise funding to be able to continue growing the business. Now, in doing that, that meant having to go and find someone who's willing to give some money, someone who's willing to lend money. Now, there's usually people who have money sitting in the bank and they want to invest. They actually don't want to have it in the bank. It's not making them any money, honey. So they are looking for people who they can work with, but not just people. They're looking for businesses, organizations, individuals. At some point, if you're in a business, you may need funding. You may run out of cash and realize that you need money to grow the business. And that's exactly what happened to me. So I had to go and raise finance, starting with my first £10,000, and use that money to capitalize on rent to rent. So raising finance required a certain mindset, the belief that I can take on that money and give it back within the agreed period of time. So this is not just me waking up one day and thinking, yeah, I'm going to borrow some money. I was already in business. I already had rent to rents. The aim was to grow the rent to rent business. And in order to do that, I needed more money because I ran out of money quickly. I needed to be able to transact on the opportunities that were coming my way, which is the whole reason you want some money, is so when you have opportunities coming, you can act on them. Or say you already have an opportunity, you can act on it. So raising finance is ideal, and developing the skill to do it, although it's not a huge special skill that you need, exercising that muscle of knowing what people want and how to tailor to their needs to make sure it's a win-win for both of you is what you're going to learn about in this video today. So I raised £10,000 and it was challenging at first because it was my first amount of money I'd ever raised, and it required a lot of know-how. So the person who I raised the money from, I found them in a professional networking event. It was a property event, and they were going who they themselves wanted to invest in property. So it's someone who is already of that thinking. They weren't brand new to investing. They weren't brand new to even lending money because they had done it before and they knew exactly what they wanted. Even if you're looking to work with someone who hasn't loaned money before, it's quite simple, it's quite straightforward, but they need to be the one who wants to do it. This isn't a thing about you having to go and find someone and then convince them to give you money. You want someone who's saying, look, I want to put my money in something. What's available out there? And they may have already looked online and seen maybe government bonds. They've probably seen, huge developers who are offering 10%, 5%, 1%. They've probably seen all the different options that they have, and they're still looking, and then you are just presenting them an option that you have as one of your services. So you are providing them a service so their money's not left in the bank. So that's the key thing to remember, is that it's not you going to them with like a begging pot, like, please give me money, because I talk about that in another video where I talk about how you can raise finance to buy a house. It's not that type of situation. This is where you are saying, look, what's your money doing right now in the bank? What's your money doing for you? What? Did you say 0.1%? No way. That's minimal. That's nothing. I mean, this time next year, you're going to have the same amount of money in your bank. Well, consider this. I'm looking for finance and I can offer you beep 6%, right? So the amount of interest you're offering is all up to you. It's all down to the service that you're offering. It's all down to how you're going to transact with that money. So if you're going to borrow money from someone, you want to make sure that whatever you're going to do with it, it's going to profit enough for you to pay them back the agreed amount on top, the agreed accrued interest. So my format was quite simple. I borrowed £10,000. We agreed I'll have that money for 12 months. If I needed it for an extra 3 months, then I can do that, because we've already agreed in the contract. There was a clause in the contract that said if I want to pay back within 3 months early, then I can do so. And if I want to pay back more than 3 months after the agreed 12 months, then I can do that. All I have to do is let them know a month ahead of time. That's how the contract was. They could also recall the loan on that 12th month, but they could not recall the loan any earlier. So I'm stressing to you, like I stressed to them, that this money will be needed for a minimum of 12 months, and that is core and that's key, because they need to know that you are going to be using that money, and you don't want to have to be having to answer phone calls at 1 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock at night saying, hey, you know, there's not a 1 o'clock at night. You don't want to have to be answering phone calls of people calling you and saying, look, what happened to the money? Where's the money? I need the money. Can I have the money? You know, da 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 da. You don't want that. It's better to request the money for longer periods of time than you actually need it, so you are not filled with rue and having to just regret you ever took on that client, regret you ever had to borrow money from this person. You don't want to have to do that. The key thing was finding someone in a professional network who was already looking to lend their money. There are places on Facebook where you can find that, because there's still networking events happening. So if you're in business, right, and you're looking to raise some finance, there are angel invested websites. There are networking events where people are looking to fund deals, fund opportunities. There's pitch fests where people are going to pitch their businesses all online. It's all out there. You've just got to be able to know your product, present it in a way that someone can understand that service easily, get their head around it, because that could be a challenge sometimes, get their head around it, and then make an informed decision. Okay, some of them will want to go away and make a decision and come back, that's fine, but they want to make an informed decision. So that's exactly what I did. I knew what I wanted to do. It was a lady. With this service now, she was in the networking events already looking to lend her money. She was actually looking to get started in the strategy, but then realized the time that it takes for you to transact on a rent-to-rent deal, she just never had the time to do it. And guess who did have the time? Yeah, I did. So I was saying, look, how about I just take your money and you can get similar returns, but in 1 year's period of time. So, you know, a rent to rent, as though you've had it for 1 year, which you should never have it for 1 year. You always want to have it 3 to 5 years. But give her good returns, enough where it's manageable for her. She's happy with the return. She's going to get some good profit on top of her money. And then as well as that, I can get my properties. I can get the properties that I want, you know, that I have presented to me, and I not have to say no because I can't afford it. That's the key thing. So when we met, we actually exchanged numbers, and then we had a number of conversations. It wasn't a smooth sailing because I didn't need the money at the time that I met her. It's not until the opportunity arose of me having all these rent-to-rent opportunities and I couldn't capitalize on them that I said, you know what, let me get that box of networking cards out, because I got this huge box of networking cards, and then I can literally go through them and call these people and see who's who and what's what. So I probably had made at least a good 2 days worth of phone calls before I got to her number and then called her, and then she said, let's take it further, let's discuss further. Now I'd had that before plenty of times. People are like, okay, send me details. Okay, send me details. And you get that a lot when people are considering, you know, taking money on from you. They just want to have the information, and rightly so, because you're looking for a lot of money. So if they're saying, hey, send me the details, send them the details, but make sure you follow up afterwards. So when I followed up with her, she was interested, not only because she wanted to get started herself on rent to rent, but just never had the time, but also it's because it was a win-win. She's gonna borrow this money to me, and I'm not only gonna do it in rent to rent, but I was willing to show her exactly what I did, what I do, how do I make the decisions, come and see the property, meet the tenants if you want to, and that's what she ended up doing. So, well, one property. She ended up doing that with one property, just coming to see what it was all about, because for her, she wanted it to be a learning experience as well. So yes, she was borrowing the money. Yes, she was making money on top of her money, but she also wanted to learn from the experience. There are some scenarios where you don't have to do any of that. They will borrow you the money and they're just armchair investors. They sit back and they wait to collect their funds back. Now, with us, we also agreed that I would pay her monthly. I would pay her in a minimum amount per month, and then at the end, I would give her interest. And that's what she wanted. So some people want to do roll-ups, where you roll up all that money that you would have paid monthly and they just get a lump sum at the end. Hey, that's fine too. But in this certain situation, I never did that. She just wanted it monthly, and then I paid her the interest at the end. And that was quite cool. Now, interest rates. Speaking of interest rates, let's talk about that. Now, interest rates, they vary. So there's not one set amount that I can tell you that you should be offering or taking on. Okay, it's all up to you. But the key thing is you need to know what works. You need to know whether or not, if you're going to borrow £100 or borrow £10,000 and offer them 10% on their money, whatever you're going to do with that money, it needs to be able to at least make 20% so you can pay that money back. That's the key thing. Do not operate to a tight margin, because you will not sleep. You will have a sleepless night, okay? So if you're supposed to take on £10,000 and you said, okay, I'm going to give you back 10%, and you can't do the 10%, you're going to have to come out your own pocket. And do you know what that does? It defeats the whole purpose of borrowing the money in the first place. So be suave about your investing. Be suave about your borrowing, and do not overstretch yourself. Do not over leverage yourself. Make sure that you can afford the loan. Now, security will come in different formats. Loans can be secured or unsecured. In this circumstance, I was borrowing only £10,000, so the loan was unsecured. It was in a contract. We had a contract where we had all the details relative and relating to that loan. So those details were, the name of the bank that the money was coming from, the name of the bank that the money was going to, the name of the investor, the date they transacted, and likewise with me, my name, my bank details. It also had the terms of the loan. So how long I'm going to borrow it for, when I received it, and when I pay it back. Very important. Then it also had the details of the actual amount and then the accrued interest. We also had solicitor's details. In the event that something happened, I can have her solicitor's details and she will have mine, and then we can communicate via that if it ever got to that. As well as that, we had addresses on there. So who and where is this information going to go to in the event you have to claim from this contract, which this will never happen. That will never happen, will it? Because y'all are going to pay that money back. You're going to be sensible about the way you're taking on money. But the information is all there. It's very, very important. You want to be able to have an enforceable contract. So if it goes wrong, they can take you to court. Okay? You got to be a man of your word. That's what I'm teaching you. Be a man of your word. Borrow the money, give it back, and be a man of your word. Or a woman of your word. So taking the money was not always straightforward. Like I said before, we met about 2 to 3 times. It did not happen overnight. It's important that you give the investor a breathing space, like I did, and I gave her at least a good 2 to 3 days and came back to her and say, hey, have you read the information? And then give them time to respond and so forth. Do not be over pushy or desperate. That's so unattractive, and it really just shows that I don't think you're in a position to be taking on any kind of money, unless you're in a very tight situation where you're about to lose this deal. I mean, it's about to go like yesterday and you need that money now, right? Then you can let them know the urgency of this loan, but then you let them know that ahead of time so they can move quick. So there you have it. That's how I borrowed £10,000, and that's how you can look around to see how you can go and borrow money too. Again, you want to look at professionals, people who are already looking to lend their money. You're not going to try and convince your next door neighbor who you know has some money sitting in the pocket, but you don't want to, she might not be ready to spend right now. You don't want to convince someone like that because it will be very difficult working with them. You want to work with someone who's already investment suave. They know exactly what they want and they trust you. I hope you enjoyed that information. Consider subscribing and saying hello down below. Let me know, how much money are you trying to raise and what ways are you going to go about it? Or if you have already raised money, let us know how you did it so we can all get in on the gab. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.